Another year over, which means it's time for another totally original top 10 games list from myself. 2025 was an odd year for me. I think it had some phenomenal releases, some surprise hits, but also a handful of disappointing games from titles I'd been eagerly awaiting for years. Take your pick from any of these. As was the case with last year, my list is taken from the bi-weekly podcast Off the Record, which I do with Liam Robertson. If you want to hear the full hour-long podcast where we also discuss our biggest surprise, our biggest disappointment, the best moment, the best soundtrack, and our most anticipated games of 2026, then click the link in the description below to hear it. You'll also get to hear Liam's top 10 games of the year there too, which, slight spoilers, his list is somewhat similar to mine, but then I've always said he has had good taste in games. Anyway, enough of the intro, I'll hand it over to past Liam as he can lead me into my top 10 games of 2025.
What's your number 10, Dan? What's your 10th favourite? And by the way, this is not a serious big deal. No, this is a bit arbitrary ranking these. It's just a bit of fun. These are some games we enjoyed. That's all you should take from this, I think.
I take this super seriously. I can't speak for you, I guess, but you know, I actually really struggled to put. I had like a 9, like a top 9. And I was like, I kept jutting in the 10th position multiple times, and I'm like, and even now I'm looking at the number 10. I'm like, fuck it. My number 10 is Keeper, which is the Lighthouse game from Double Fine.
Oh yeah. I remember hearing about this, but I never played it.
No, I really enjoyed Keeper. I think it's a really sweet, I don't say platformer, but like a puzzle adventure game. Very much like sort of in the vein of like their previous works in terms of how charming it is. Like it's quite sort of like basic with the way you just sort of move the lighthouse at the beginning. It's a really like an inventive game that uses one sort of mechanic before you've got bored of that. It's move on to the next mechanic. It's one of those games, you know, like it's a 6 hour roughly, I think, to beat the game, but it's one of those charming games that's just like you're always doing something new with every sort of chapter. And it's also like it looks really cool as well, like visually. I love the art style.
I've seen a video of it, I think, and it looked pretty cool visually.
Yeah, you have like this bird perched up on you called Twig that you can sort of like use to sort of send out to interact with the environment. Kind of wish it was almost in VR because it feels like it could be a VR game, but you know, it's not.
Can't have it all.
No, you can't. But so moving on to my number 9, another sort of, a very small game actually. There's this indie game called Time Flies. I don't know if you've heard of it.
No, I haven't. It seems like you've been playing some much more interesting things than I have this year.
Well, the first 5, yes. The next 5 are a lot more like sort of the basic AAA stuff, I'll be honest. But a lot of these are more indie stuff at the beginning. But yeah, sort of it looks like a Flash game from like Newgrounds or something. Like the art style is like just this black and white sort of almost made using like Microsoft Paint or something. It's very charming though. You play as a housefly, like a 2D perspective, and the idea is that you're like achieving like this list before the timer runs out. So sort of like structured like a cross between Untitled Goose Game and Thank Goodness You're Here, where you're sort of like it has like a similar sort of like style of humor as well. Yeah, so you have like objectives like learn to play an instrument, and it'll be literally like you just as a flag strum across a guitar like in this house, or like getting drunk. So like you'll have to find like a bit of spilt wine and slurp it up, and then the whole screen will go sort of like all like wavy. It gets like more intricate. Like you realize that you can't do certain objectives in the allotted time until you realize like stuff you can literally turn back time by moving the hands of a clock to like prolong your life expectancy of the fly, because it's kind of like a little bit rogue-esque where like when you die you have to redo all the checklist again, but you kind of have to do it in like one run to like move on to the next level, like the next area. It's quite funny how you start off each run by picking what country you're from, and that determines how long the timer is of the fly. So like if you like were picking a fly from Switzerland, you're going to get like a bigger allotted time than you would do if you picked a country from like Africa or something. So it's like kind of like it's like very like, okay then I see what you're trying to do here. It's very short. It's like literally 4 levels long. It's pretty cheap and it can be beaten in like 2 hours. Thoroughly recommend this. You know, if you look this up, it's a really cool game. But yeah, number 8 we have, if I look at my list again, Split Fiction, which I love playing this game in co-op. It's basically It Takes Two again. I really enjoyed It Takes Two. I think overall I think that this game isn't quite as consistent as It Takes Two, but I'd say it has higher highs, specifically the ending sequence. Everyone I hear talk about this game always talks about it like it's a really like incredibly inventive game throughout. The ending sequence is just like, it's one of those games like where all the stuff you've learned throughout the game, it just like piles it on at the end, and just it's big bombastic sort of like a set piece. I would enjoy this game more, I think, if it wasn't for the characters being really insufferable at times, and the overall plot being very much on the nose about like stealing game developers' ideas. The characters are very one-dimensional. I don't know if you've played Split Fiction, Liam?
It was one that I really wanted to play, but to be honest, that was something that held me back from playing it. Was I'd heard it was a good game, but that the writing was really annoying or something. People kept telling me that,
Yeah,
I think I might still play it at some point.
It's worth it.
My girlfriend, maybe.
It's definitely like a great game to play with a partner. This whole thing built on it, really, as was It Takes Two. But yeah, the story isn't great. But like, I can look past that because I think the gameplay is really fun and inventive enough that I still had a really good time.
Okay.
Number 7, don't laugh, is Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. Despite being my biggest disappointment of the year, I still really enjoyed the game when it was just being Metroid Prime. Visually, it looks incredible. I love the environments, the music's phenomenal. As much as the combat overstayed its welcome in parts, I still like really enjoy that kind of like pressing that button to mash like the charge beam and unlocking new weapons and new items and stuff. The game is disappointing in so many ways as a Metroid Prime fan. The fact that this is even low down on my list is horrible to say, but I just couldn't not have it on my list because I still loved playing the game when it was Metroid, like Fury Greens. It just needed to be a big area, but like visually it looked really cool. I don't know if Metroid Prime 4 makes your list or anything, but
I have some quite complicated feelings about it, but I understand where you're at.
Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say for now. But yeah, number 6 is Doom: The Dark Ages, which I feel like I don't really hear enough people talk about at all with like their Game of the Year stuff, which is fair because I think this maybe is the weakest of the Doom reboot trilogy, but man, I still think the combat is just so fucking cathartic. Like the weapons that you unlock, like that shield, like the main crux of the game with the shield is just like, I think actually more visceral and fun to use than any of the other weapons in the other Doom games. I know people have like problems with the flying sections, which I actually kind of like them. They're kind of like Star Fox Light. I honestly don't mind them. Like they're fun pace breakers. The giant mech one sections, like they're few and far between luckily, but like yeah, they're not great. I mean, yeah, the shield parry, like it's one of my favorite weapons in a game this year. I love using it. I 100% of the game as well, which I didn't do with the previous Doom games. It is definitely easier than Doom 2016 and Eternal. I think as we discussed probably on the podcast when this game came out, making it just fun for me in my old age now, in my mid-30s. I don't want a game that stresses me out sometimes, and I remember I dropped down the difficulty of Eternal because it really frustrated me with some of the enemies, and I played this on normal and I replayed parts of it again on the harder difficulties and was like, yeah, this game is just fucking fun. It's Doom, feels good, it looks good, and I don't know what they're going to do next with id, what the next project is, but I kind of hope it isn't just another Doom, because as much as I enjoyed this trilogy, I'm definitely done with this. So that was
I quite hope they go back to basics and do something more like 2016.
Yeah, I agree.
Where it was much more smaller scale in terms of the levels and stuff like that. I thought it was much better when they did that. They didn't need to keep making it bigger. I think that made it worse.
Yeah. My number 5 is a game that people also sort of talk about like being disappointed this year, but like I've had nothing but like enjoyment playing it, and that's Mario Kart World. I think that like a lot of people dog on this game, and granted, like, all right, there's some elements of it that aren't great, like the open world sounds very similar to Metroid Prime 4 here, was undercooked. It could have been amazing. It was just maybe just lacking. But I think like the main thing that people seem to just kind of forget about this game is the mobility, like the movement, the way that you can like chain together like almost like combos. It feels like learning like a fighting game almost, like with the learning the tracks of like knowing like where to. I guess like any Mario Kart, but like this is the most like the highest skill ceiling I would say with any Mario Kart. I don't think overall it tops Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which I think is very fucking difficult to do. It's almost like Christopher Nolan trying to top like The Dark Knight. It's like that's probably like the peak of what you're gonna get. They had to do something different. I really like admire like this open world element to these tracks, and I think as a kid I would have absolutely loved just exploring the open world and doing nothing other than just exploring it. Yeah. But as an adult I do need a bit more structure. I just think that the tracks are like incredibly inventive still. I love like the Boo Cinema track, for example.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I also just love even just finding on the like the overworld itself, like finding like Boo Lake or like the original like Mario circuit. They've sort of combined these like original tracks into one big track, like, so now you can see all the different Mario circuits from the Super Nintendo era on like this one big sort of track. All the throwbacks, like you said about the music as well, is phenomenal. I think that the whole like animation of it, everything like feels so alive, and I still really love the multiplayer. Played a bit of online like with yourself, but also I've played a lot of like the sort of local stuff over Christmas and just been like, yeah, all right, this game has some issues, but but I've had nothing but fun. For me, it's actually one of my favorite Mario Karts. I wouldn't maybe put it in the top 3 maybe, but I'd probably put it like below Double Dash and 8 at Deluxe. I want to see, hopefully they update that game more, some of the other issues I had with it. But yeah, anyway, moving on to number 4 is my biggest surprise of the year, which is Blueprints. Yeah, like I said, just I wasn't expecting to like a roguelike puzzle game like this where it's essentially like The Witness meets What Remains of Edith Finch, but like also the last dungeon of the Skyward Sword, where you're like placing down different rooms, the goal like trying to get to like this locked room at the end of the mansion, and the more you play it, the more you sort of learn like the mechanics of how to get to the end before like you have to like restart the day. Underneath all of that like really cool puzzle element of like this roguelike, there's just this really like interesting story, this lore of this mansion. I won't spoil anything here for sure, but like finding out that like, oh, there's more to just the mansion. You're not just in the mansion and trying to like get to the end. There's so much other like lore shit, which granted, once you see the final credits, there's a load of post-game stuff, which I'll be honest, I kind of fell off before I like 100% of this game, as it were. But leading up to that, seeing everything click, where all of a sudden like in like this other room, you'll see like a chessboard and you have to place the chess pieces on like these different squares, but then you'll notice that like, where do I have to place them? But then when you go into the house and you've unlocked all the rooms, you'll notice like, oh, that room's got like a pawn in that room, and that room's got like a king. And then you realize that the chessboard actually correlates to the whole mansion layout itself, and that's where you have to place the pieces. Really like just inventive puzzles that you don't understand the first time you play it, but the more you learn the game, the more you understand the language of the game, and then it just like all clicks. And like I could not stop replaying this game again and again. But yeah, and it's also a really fun game to play when you're with someone as well in the same room who like can help you with the puzzles. I would actually advise that, because the game's puzzles can be quite obtuse if you're trying to figure them out by yourself. But moving on to number 3 is Ghost of Yotei, which I loved a hell of a lot. I loved Tsushima, and I think that this game does everything Tsushima does, but better. Like it just builds and improves on everything from that 2020 game. Reminds me a little bit of like Kill Bill in a way, with like the Yotei sick. You start off by like essentially being almost killed by them at the beginning of the game, and the whole point is you're going around trying to kill them off one by one. It has one of my favorite openings to a game of this year as well, with the way that you like on the horseback jump through the forest and then like go onto this open field, and then the title drops and the music swells and kicks in. You're like, yeah, fucking right. The plot can be a little predictable, but like the characters I think are infinitely more memorable, interesting than Tsushima. The gameplay as a whole as well is improved as well. I much prefer the way that you have like different weapons rather than the stances of Tsushima. Just exploring the world itself as well is just was more open, but also more interesting. Like I feel like I was almost like going off like just check markers a little bit on Tsushima, whereas Yotei gave you a lot more freedom to kind of do what you wanted. Like, you know, you have like 2 story quests, I guess, and you can kind of choose which one, which is fine. But like even just opening the world up as well, like I kind of enjoyed that.
Yeah.
But moving from one big AAA open world Sony published game to another, my number 2 is Death Stranding 2 on the beach.
Oh yeah.
I loved the first Death Stranding, as I've said many times. I think that was my favorite game of whatever it was, 2019 that came out now. This game, a bit like Yotei actually, like this improves in every conceivable way over the original, to the point where like I don't think I could ever properly go back to the original game, because just in terms of moving around the world is just so much more interesting. There's more things to do, even more full of like Kojima wackiness than I'd say the first game. The first game was definitely a bit more sort of muted on kind of the crazy Metal Gear stuff, whereas like without going into spoilers, Death Stranding 2, especially the way that like it builds towards the end, like villains in this game are so much more interesting. It's still full of that like Kojima nonsense, which if you're not on board with it, then you won't like it. But if you do like a lot of that nonsense, this game like just brings it up to 11. Gameplay and story, it just everything that like I think Kojima has made over the years, this just feels like almost like a culmination of like everything he's learned into this game. It feels a lot more sort of like inventive and interesting with the combat with first Death Stranding, like a bit like Metal Gear Solid 5 Phantom Pain. How like you can tackle any objective how you want. It isn't just like go into a base and try and defeat the enemies. You can do any which way. You can drive all these different vehicles, exploring and opening the world up. This is one of those games that's long, and I could not put it down until I finished it. Like I kind of blitzed through it in terms of just couldn't stop playing the game. It was actually very close to being my number 1, honestly, because I also went to, this is a bit of a side note, but I also went to the concert, a tour around the world of the music of the Death Stranding games, and I went to the one in Hammersmith Apollo in London, I guess, as we recorded this a couple months ago. That just almost like cemented my love for this game even more. Like, and like I said, the music as well was my favourite soundtrack of the year. Just everything about this game is phenomenal, and I will absolutely lap up whatever Kojima does next. I'm not like some Kojima lover. I have not enjoyed every one of his games or anything, but yeah, Death Stranding 2 is actually maybe one of my favorites that he's ever done.
Cool. Do you think he's done with that now, or is it a complete story after 2?
Yeah, it absolutely is a complete story, but I wouldn't, like, without spoiling anything, like, there's definitely room for, like, more of this world. Okay. There's supposed to be a film in development, but he's doing that Fizzant game next, which is the Metal Gear, like, not Metal Gear game that he's doing, and then obviously he's got that OD, that game with Microsoft. Yeah. He's doing that, like, weird PT style game, so if there's going to be a Death Stranding 3, I wouldn't expect to see that for, like, about another 15 years. So,
okay.
Number 1 is, without a doubt, Donkey Kong Bonanza.
Wow.
I love, as you know, Liam, like, big, open 3D platformers that just are all about movement, mobility, and getting around the world, and just, like, discovering, like, cool little, like, intricacies about, like, certain levels and stuff. Never would have thought that making a platformer where you can destroy the world itself could work. They somehow made this work. With every level that goes by, it becomes more and more, like, interesting. Like, I love that theme park style level towards the end of the game. The music, as you say, is fucking phenomenal. I love the visuals of it, the way it looks, the way it animates. I love, like, the little, like, details of, like, everything is banana shaped. So, like, you know, even the plants, the flowers, the fucking rays on the sun, the lens flare.
Lens flare.
Like, it's like, what the fuck? Like, there's just... I love little fucking details like that. And, you know, we mentioned, like, our favourite moment of the year, which, again, I won't spoil here, but yeah, that ending sequence, man, the way that, like, that was revealed was just, like, I've not been that happy playing a video game, like, in fucking so long. Mm-hmm. Basically, actually, now think about it, since, like, Astrobot with some of the levels in that game, like, it reminds me a lot of that game in terms of having just a really fun game that just was making me happy throughout, constantly in awe and just a joy to play that game. Do I wish this team were going to do an Odyssey game or a Mario 3D platformer next? Yeah, absolutely. But I'm glad they got to do this because I love Donkey Kong. The callbacks to the country games as well in those 2D sections with the context of the mechanics of Bonanza. Love it. Yeah, my favourite game of the year.
I don't blame you. I think there's some similarities between your list and what remains of mine. Mm-hmm. That last act was so exciting that I remember I had to, like, pause it. I had to hit the home button and just take a minute to calm myself down because I was getting so excited. And it's rare that a game can actually make me feel something in an ending like this when I've had it so good before in games like Games Platinum have done, you know? Because that is like a high watermark to reach, and this does it.